That's the whole of my story, gentlemen. You may consider me to be a murderer, but I hold that I am as much an officer of justice as you are.
Hi, I'm Aziza, and welcome to my show. Today we have some very special guests. Our first guests of the day are Mr. Sherlock Holmes and Dr. John Watson. So, Dr. Watson, how did you and Mr. Holmes meet after you returned from the war?
I was released from the war after being struck by a Jezebel bullet. I needed to get my mind off things, so I went to the bar, where I saw my good friend Stanford.
Whatever have you been doing with yourself, Watson?
I was struck in the war and I couldn't return.
Poor devil, what are you up to now?
Looking for lodging.
That's a strange thing. You are the second man today that has used that expression with me.
Who was the first?
A fellow who is working at the chemical laboratory, Mr. Sherlock Holmes. Dr. Watson, meet Mr. Sherlock Holmes. Sherlock, meet Dr. Watson.
How are you? You have been in Afghanistan, I perceive.
How on earth did you know that?
Never mind. The question now is about hemoglobin. No doubt you see the significance of this discovery of mine.
It is interesting, chemically, no doubt.
Come here now. I add this small quantity of blood to a liter of water.
What?
What a great story that was, Dr. Watson. Describe to me the first case that you and Mr. Holmes worked on together.
Well, it all started with a letter Sherlock and I received.
I have the letter here.
I see that.
My dear Mr. Sherlock Holmes, there has been a bad business during the night at 3 Lauriston Gardens off the Brixton Road. Our man on the beat saw a light there about 2 in the morning, and as the house was an empty one, suspected that something was amiss. He found the open door, and in the front room, which is bare of furniture, discovered the body of a gentleman, well dressed and having cards in his pocket bearing the name of Enoch J. Drebber, Cleveland, Ohio, USA. There had been no robbery, nor is there any evidence as to how the man met his death. There are marks of blood in the room, but there is no wound upon his person. We are at a loss as to how he came into the empty house. Indeed, the whole affair is a puzzler. If you could come round to the house at any time before 12, you will find me there. I have left everything in status quo until I hear from you. If you are unable to come, I shall give you fuller details, and you would esteem in a great kindness if you would favor me with your opinions. Your faithfulness, Tobias Gregson.
Watson, I have received this letter. We must go to 3 Lauriston Gardens to investigate.
Off we go, Holmes. Look, Holmes, it says rash written on the wall in blood. What could that mean?
The man has no wounds. Interesting. More interesting. What is this?
It's a ring, I think.
I think it belongs to a woman. How interesting.
Mother of God, have you been in there, Gregson?
Yes, I have, Lestrade. It is awful.
Dr. Watson, what is that?
It's a ring. A woman's ring.
Who does it belong to?
We'll have to find that out. Not to worry, detectives. The great Sherlock Holmes, of course, has this covered.
So, Watson, after you finished searching for the clues, what did you and Holmes do next?
We went to the home of Detective Rance, who informed us that he saw a drunken man roaming the streets after he found the body. Come in. Welcome to my home, Dr. Watson and Mr. Sherlock Holmes.
From the crime scene, I have deduced that this man must be just over 6 feet tall.
How can you possibly know that, Mr. Holmes?
By the length of his strides.
What else have you been able to deduce?
He has untrimmed fingernails on his right hand.
Sherlock, how could you know that, too?
The plaster on the wall where he wrote rash was slightly scratched. This would not have occurred had his nails been properly trimmed. Now, I must not reveal anything else. As you know, a conjurer gets no credit when once he has explained his tricks.
Dr. Watson, all this has been so crazy. How did you feel about being part of your very first case?
I was certainly shaken. I had to keep my cool, though. I didn't want Sherlock Holmes to notice my discomfort. I look up to him. That night, Holmes did come up with a plan.
Tell me, Mr. Holmes, what was your plan?
Well, you see, I put an advertisement in the found column of the local paper. It said, "In Brixton Road this morning, a plain gold wedding ring was found in the roadway between the White Hart Tavern and Holland Grove. Apply to Dr. Watson, 221B Baker Street, between 8 and 9 o'clock this evening."
How did you know that your plan would work?
Well, the ring must have been very important to the killer, and I just knew that they would do anything to get it back.
So Watson, after you finished searching for the clues, what did you and Holmes do next?
We went to the home of Detective Rance, who informed us that he saw a drunken man roaming the streets after he found the body.
So did the killer show up?
Not quite. A woman by the name Sawyer arrived and cried tears of joy. She claimed the ring belonged to her daughter, Sally Dennis. This impostor was quick on her feet, and we had no reason to keep the ring from her.
Yes, and so we gave the ring to Sally and hurried to follow her.
The story is getting more and more interesting. Find out what happens next after the break.
Cake, 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 cake. Ain't never lived until you tried your grandmama's Tyson Southern chicken.
If you are just joining us, we are learning about A Study in Scarlet. Please welcome to the show Detective Gregson and Detective Western. Explain to me why you thought this Arthur Charpentier was the killer.
Well, Aziza, you see Mr. Charpentier beat up Mr. Drebber the night of his death. I logically thought that he was the killer.
That makes sense to me. Lestrade, I know that you were the one who discovered Stangerson's body. Tell me all about it.
I knew Mr. Stangerson was living at Halliday's private hotel in Little George Street. During my inquiry, I found poor Mr. Stangerson dead in his room.
How did he come upon this untimely death?
The cause of death was a deep stab in the left side, which must have penetrated the heart.
Interesting.
Yes, and even more interesting is what I found on the wall.
What exactly did you find?
The words rash, written in blood.
Just as at the crime scene of Drebber. How interesting was that? Now welcome back, Mr. Holmes. So, Mr. Holmes, I'm sure that you had an idea of who the murderer was at this point.
Yes, I knew that Jefferson Hope was the culprit.
And how did you come to this conclusion?
I had my group of irregulars call the cab company Mr. Hope was working for to come and pick us up.
And what happened next?
You're just going to have to wait and find out.
You heard him, everyone. We'll find out what happens next. Stay tuned.
It's
not delivery, it's Mama Cozy's. I went to Jared's.
Mr. John, are we gonna die like everybody else?
I guess that is about the size of it.
That's okay. At least then I will be with Mother once again. How much longer before we go?
Don't worry, my dear little Lucy. It can't be much longer now.
Boys, we rowdy. Shout to all my boss boys. Shout to all my boss boys. We rowdy. Shout to all my boss boys. Shout to all my boss boys. Bang your ready. Bang your ready.
You see that?
See what?
Them two dots over there.
Yeah, so?
I think that's people. Let's check it out. Look, a cacti. Do you two need help?
Yes. Oh, thank goodness. Who are you?
We are the Mormons.
If you want our help, there are a few things you're going to need to do.
Anything.
You'll have to join our religion.
Like I said, I would do anything.
Come with us.
Boys, we rowdy. Shout to all my boss boys. Shout to all my boss boys. We rowdy. Shout to all my boss boys. Shout to all my boss boys. Bass.
Lucy, I'm afraid I have some bad news.
I heard. It's forbidden that I marry Hope, for he is not a Mormon.
Precisely. And you must choose between Draper and Stangerson. You have only 30 days, but fear not, I have a plan. We shall write Hope and inform him of what is happening. He must come and help us escape.
Dad, it's Hope. He's here.
Oh, thank goodness.
Sorry I couldn't get here sooner.
No time for apologies. Let's get out of here.
Agreed. I must go retrieve some supplies if we are to continue.
Please, hurry back.
I just hate being lost. Oh no, Mr. Ferrier is gone. What have they done with my dear Lucy?
Now I'm lying on the cold hard ground. Trouble, trouble, trouble. Trouble.
I took the marriage ring from her dead finger, and I vowed that his dying eyes should rest upon that very ring, and that his last thoughts should be of the crime for which he was punished.
What a story this has been. Welcome onto the show, Mr. Jefferson Hope himself.
Hey, y'all.
So why did you confess without any problems?
I've got a good deal to say. I want to tell you gentlemen all about it.
Hadn't you better reserve that for your trial?
I may never be tried. You needn't look startled. It isn't suicide I'm thinking of. Are you a doctor?
Yes, I am.
Then put your hand here.
Why, you have an aortic aneurysm.
That's what they call it. I went to a doctor last week about it, and he told me that it's bound to burst before many days passed. It has been getting worse for years. I got it from overexposure and underfeeding among the Salt Lake Mountains. I've done my work now, and I don't care how soon I go, but I should like to leave some account of the business behind me.
Holmes and Dr. Watson are back. How did you both feel about Mr. Hope's death?
I was glad that we were able to solve the case first.
I agree.
Mr. Holmes, did you mind that you didn't get the credit for solving these murders?
Of course not. As long as the right culprit is found, I am happy.
Thank you for coming, Mr. Sherlock Holmes. You are always welcome back.
Thank you.
Welcome back our two lead detectives, Lestrade and Gregson. Why did you two take the credit for solving the case?
Well, Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson aren't detectives, so it is only right that the police got the credit.
Thank you for your time. End our show with Dr. Watson. So, Doctor, I hear you've been keeping a journal.
Yes, I want accurate records of what transpired.
I understand. Well, that's all we have time for. Good night, everybody.